Hello, everybody. It's Zashin of Zashin Zone again. Normally, I have a video to talk against. Today, I decided just to do a review of our Bill of Rights. We're actually going to look at the first 12 articles of the Constitution, numbers 3 through 12 being our Bill of Rights, number 1 and 2 being the first things that our constitutional writers addressed. Alright, we're going to scroll down through here, and I'm not going to read all this because, if you want to read every bit of that, you can. But here's the first article of the Constitution, sets up our Republican system. It says how the representation should be sent up on the number of people in the states and make sure how the Congress will be proportionally addressed. All right. And the second one basically says if you're in office, you can't vote yourself a raise or a benefit. Anything you decide on will be for the next group elected in. And of course, it will affect you if you get reelected in or if you are still in after that election happens. But you can't vote yourself a benefit. Okay, now we're going to scroll down a lot because 3, as you see, starts with our freedom of speech, press, yada, yada, yada. But I'm going to come down here. And this time we are going to start reading this stuff verbatim because it's important that you read it so you can understand it and then discuss it. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting of the free exercise thereof, or the abridging of the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. There's a whole lot covered in there, folks. The first sentence, or the first line there, basically is the United States will not have a state designated religion or a countrywide designated religion. Even though we are a Judeo-Christian society, for the most part, it will not be recognized as the state religion. Other religions will allow to be here. That's why we have Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, atheists, even some Satan worshipers in our country, and they're all protected under that first line of Article 3, which we refer to as Amendment 1, the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights. Of abridging freedom of speech or of the press. Now that's where the government said, we cannot silence you just because we think you might be wrong. We cannot silence you because of your moral opposition to the government stand. All right. This whole fake news wanting to shut it down, they're going to have a hard time of that part of the Amendment 1 not stopping them from being able to implement this. third line, the right of the people to peaceably assemble. The right of the people to peaceably to assemble. That means these riots and getting into fights with the police is illegal. That stuff is not protected under the Constitution. Their right to assemble, their right to try and get people to hear them and hear their side of a discussion is protected. And you know my opinion. Everybody should be able to get their opinion out there. If it's wrong or if it's bullshit, the light of day will take care of it. Logic and reality has a massive way of stepping in when imagination and feelings wants to rule the day. And to petition government for a redress of grievances. If the government screws up, the people have the right to go through the courts and argue against it. That's why you see a lot of things go to the Supreme Court where people are saying that a law was improper. Amendment 1's huge. It does a lot to protect individual rights. Amendment 2. Regulated militia being necessarily to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, the Democrats and the gun control advocates have been pushing the very first part of that, a well-regulated militia being the necessary to the security of a free state. Well, that would, if you took that just by itself, it would mean the states could keep arms and then dole out the arms to the people when they wanted to rebel against the federal government. But the next part specifically says, no, the states can't do that. The right of the people to keep and bear arms. The people will be allowed to keep and bear arms. And yes, for these people that say that they don't like seeing the military type rifles in society, what type of arms do you think they were talking about back then? The musket was a hunting rifle, yes, but it was also the modern military arm of the time. So they understood that they were asking for an armed citizenry. They wanted an armed citizenry to be able to ensure against the tyranny of the government. Amendment 3. No soldier in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, or in time of war, but in a manner prescribed by law. And that's pretty straightforward. They're saying that the government can't tell an individual to house a soldier against their will. The military can't come in, kick you out of your house, take your house. Well, except in time of war as prescribed by law. They could do it under the, like when they confiscate land for doing road work, road bypasses and whatnot. But it's not done in the United States. They can't just hand over to the citizenry the cost of housing all our soldiers. The country is responsible for the housing of the soldiers and paying for the housing of the soldiers. Amendment 5. No, Amendment 4. That was 3. This is 4. The right of the people to secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Y'all see this all the time on TV. It's where the police officer has to get a warrant. The FBI has to get a warrant to search a home, search a garage, search a car, unless, now cars, they've slightly changed up with probable cause, but in most cases, probable cause shouldn't be leaned on too hard because it can be touchy in court. This is why the police can't come in your house and search it from one end to the other without getting a judge to sign off on it. It is your right as a citizen not to be intimidated by our law enforcement personnel. Amendment 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense twice, but put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Again, this is individual rights. These are the most important rights they put in our Constitution right after they set up the government. This says no person shall be held answer for capital or otherwise infamous crime unless presented a presentment or indictment of grand jury. That is the innocent until proven guilty. The grand jury says there's enough evidence there to believe there is a possibility of guilt and send it to a jury for trial. Except in cases arising land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. That's where the UCMJ is used against personnel in the armed forces. Most of our militias now are National Guard forces inside the states, and they also answer to the UCMJ when acting in their role as part of the National Guard. Next part is covering you can't be held in double jeopardy or forced to incriminate yourself in a court of law. And then there's the eminent domain comes up right there. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. But eminent domain, that's where it comes from, is sometimes there is a need for it. And it's addressed. 6. In criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of accusation, to be confronted by the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Again, we've all seen plenty of Law and Order type shows in our generation, and here's why they get a lawyer assigned to them if they can't afford it. Here's why the witnesses have to be brought into court to testify against the accused. They didn't want jury by strictly accusation, or jury by I know I'm pulling hard on words here, not getting there. They wanted jury by the facts. They wanted facts in front of the jury. They wanted the jury to be able to hear the facts from the people who actually saw the crime or had honestly seen the situation being addressed by the court. They did not want opinions or hearsay. They wanted the facts. Number 7. In suits of common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall otherwise be re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. In other words, if you lose your court case, the only way you can appeal it, because that's a higher court, but you can't be took. You can't take the same company to court again just by moving a county over and using the same level court. You only get one chance at going to court. Then you have to go through the appeal process. And this says anything that exceeds $20, you have the right to a trial by jury. Well, that may have been changed now. That may have been upped some by the states. But that's where you have your right protected to a trial by jury rather than a judge who may have an opinion that biases his verdict. Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. In other words, the punishment should fit the crime. 9. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Enumeration in the Constitution. That means the expansion of the Constitution. Moving forward, these rights that have already been set out will not be infringed upon by changes to the Constitution. So if they came out with a constitutional amendment to restrict your right to bear arms, it's unconstitutional because of Amendment 9. 9's already guaranteed that any rights before 9 cannot be took away by further amendments. These are locked in. Amendment 10. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. This one is a lot of people argue back and forth on. This one is where it says the federal government should have its rights and its duties to the country, and states should be able to decide for themselves on any duties not delegated by the Constitution to the United States. We've wandered a long way from that. Our federal government at this point, in my opinion, often goes far beyond its constitutionally delegated duties. But the states haven't really fought it either. We did have a war back in 1860 to 1865 about it, but the states lost. Federalism won. And that set a precedent that really didn't take off hard until the 20th century. But it started in the last half of the 19th century. Now, Amendments 3, or Articles 3 through 12, which are the first 10 amendments of our Constitution, are the bedrock of our country. They're the reason sorry about that. That got real dark quick. Let's see if we can get a little light on the subject here. There we go. Open a white page. We get some light. The Bill of Rights is the reason America is as unique as it is. And the First and Second Amendments are the reason our government cannot ignore us. It's the reason our government can never completely be assured that it cannot be overthrown. They're the people's rights. They're your rights. They're mine. Any American citizen has these rights because they're in our Constitution, and these are the most wonderful things. When you look at other countries and you start seeing where things went wrong, It often has to do with the authorities, the people in power, denying their people's rights and liberties, treating their people like they are lesser, like the common folk don't matter. I know this isn't going to be a video that gets any sort of traction for high views, but I hope somebody sees this, listened all the way to this point, and understands America is the greatest nation on earth, not because we're the richest nation, but because we are a nation of law that understands the rights of the people to rule their own government. That's a strange concept, but it is what we've got. The people of the United States truly, in our Constitution, rule our own government. If you liked it, use those like, favorite, and subscribe buttons right down there. And love your family, love your neighbors. Merry Christmas.